Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Liverpool Connection podcast. This is story time. It's me by me, Todd, today. I've wanted to get back to these stories for a long time. Over the Christmas break, kind of took a break, family and stuff. But it's always great to hear these stories. It's just history. Whether you're a musician, ex-footballer, dad, supporter, doesn't matter what. I just love hearing him and I love listening. Our next guest, multitude of things. He's been a coach for his son. He's a renowned artist now, which we will get into a little bit later. Also the father of a ex-Liverpool player. I'll just say it now, Steve Randall, welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast story.
Well, thanks for having me, Daz.
We'll jump right in. So, obviously, Liverpool supporter, or you would not be on this podcast.
Yeah, I get
that. Hey, we've had some cheeky ones on. We've had a couple of Evertonians on, but they've been the good ones. So. Coming from, did you come from like a Reds-based family, or was it a bit half and half?
No, it was a choice. My parents are out of towners. I was the first Scouser in the family. So my dad was a prison officer, so he was working out at Walton Nick, and I was living in Kirby because that's where the quarters were. So I had a choice, and most of my mates were Evertonians actually. It was just, I was watching black and white TV with my granddad, explaining to him that Liverpool were in the slightly darker shirts, and Liverpool became my team. It wasn't anything to do with where I was living or even my mates, because I say most of them are Evertonians.
And when was your first match?
My first match is probably one of my maddest stories, and it actually led me into a crazy way of watching football in the early years. It was 1977, so I was 9, and it was Saint Etienne. So imagine Saint Etienne being your first trip to Anfield, but it's how I got there. My mum used to pick my dad up from quarters. They used to have a club in Hornby Road at the back of the prison. So all the screws used to make out that they were working 12-hour shifts, but they worked 8 and then they went on the ale for 4 hours. And this particular day, my dad had knocked off early, was in the club, and a load of French fellas arrived with tickets for the game, but they got rotten. So, of course, there's a few Scouse screws working there as well. And they decide to say to these French lads, well, you just be our guests, you stay here all day. And if you're not using those tickets, we'll have them. So as we turn up to pick my dad up, my mum goes in, comes out fuming. So he's been on the ale all day with these lads. And he comes out with 2 tickets. But him, his mate, and he goes to me, jump in the car and we can go to Anfield, go to the match tonight. I didn't even know what game was on. My consciousness at that time wasn't really switched on to me, to be fair. So we turn up at Anfield. It's absolutely rammed. You can't see a thing. Some fella in the crowd recognised me dad. Turns out that as I go at him. And do you remember those, we used to have bins on the lamppost back in the day? Yeah, well, this fella's head connected with one of them bins because he was giving me dad a load of abuse about being a screw. And I'm just this impressionable kid watching this go off going, wow, what's happening here? But my dad declares then it's not safe for him to go into the game. So he said to his mate, take Stephen. And that's where my memory sort of dwindles a little bit. I can't remember whether we got into the Anfield Road or the paddock. I think the tickets were for the paddock, I think, if I'm not wrong. I think that's where the away supporters were. But we were by a gate. There was a major gate, and I think they'd locked the turnstiles, and the gate was open. It was being blocked by police horses, and loads of people were pushing through. And I was just dragged by my dad's mate into the ground, and the rest of it is just mind-blowing. To be there on that night, the colour, the smell of the ground, the mayhem, absolute madness. And that that was me completely hooked from that moment in terms of wanting to go to games. But my dad wouldn't really go because of the incident that it had. So I was sort of hanging on the coattails of my dad's mates at first. And that was my first introduction to Anfield.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's nuts.
It was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Isn't it weird, like the smell of the ground always stays with you?
Yeah.
It really does. And then you know, some people...
And it's a generational thing though, isn't it, Daz? Because you don't get that now.
Yeah.
There are the sounds and the smells of a stadium, but they're not as industrial as they were when we were kids. And I think that's the major difference, really.
And the smell of piss.
Yeah, always. Yeah. One of my mates was with me on the cop once, and he was an Evertonian. It was the derby when Bailey scored an own goal, and he did get pissed on. So it was an Evertonian at the front of the cop. But you hear the myths, don't you? He pissed in my pocket, but they did, because he recognised he was an Evertonian, poor sod. But he's still an Evertonian to this day. He hasn't changed. Like.
Probably still smells like piss as well. Yeah, but no, what a great start. I mean, good Lord. I mean, I would have given anything to be at that game.
Well, as I say, I had no concept that game was on at the time. I first started supporting Liverpool when I was about, must have been 4 or 5 properly. I was with my granddad talking about the games and I'm watching Liverpool on the telly. And I remember distinctly the 74 Cup final. I'm running outdoors straight away after the game and pretending to be Steve Highway. And we were playing footy in the street. And our street was, half of the street was prison officers' houses. And the top half was normal houses. So we always had matches, top of the street against the bottom of the street. There were street games going on all the time. And I can remember just playing out for hours playing footy and always being Steve Highway from that moment. So from 74, I was going to be a Red. But from 77, I was desperate to get to games, but I just had no one to take me.
So was Highway your idol?
Do you know, I've often thought about this. I think it's because he was called Steve, if I'm honest. And I went, that'll do me. He's Steve, I'm Steve. And I played on the wing, and my dad was a winger as well. My dad played all services, and he was a winger. And I played usually wing or I played fullback. So I naturally gravitated towards him. But my main hero, my first one, was Callahan. I just loved him. To see the amount of work he put in a game. And it sounds mad, but my grandfather, he was a welder in Fleetwood, my granddad. And during the war, he was here working on the docks because he was invalided. He couldn't go to war, and he was servicing the guns and all kinds of things. He was working on Lancaster bombers at Preston, so he had loads of stories to tell me about that era. And then as he was watching football, it was always, you've got to be honest, the work ethic was driven into me from a very early age, and I recognised that in Cali immediately, and I loved it. I just loved his honesty. And then, fortunate enough to meet him a few years later, he's probably one of the few people I haven't been able to speak to. I was absolutely dumbstruck just meeting him after all them years. But yeah, Highway because of the name, Callahan was the main one. And then after that, it was probably Terry McDermott. Again, a Kirby connection, for being a Kirby lad,
Yeah, they're just built different back then, aren't they?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
I mean, even when you go down, the magic sponge in the bucket, you never knew what was in that bucket.
No, but it must be something quite remarkable, mustn't it?
Yeah, well, it was used the entire game, wasn't it? It wasn't like they threw it out, like cleaned it and then put something else in. Yeah, massive changes these days, to the players back then. They just seem to be able to play on with a broken leg. Now, if they feel anything, they're out.
Yeah, maybe, but I might have a different take on that as well later on when we get into it. But I still think some players try and play when they should be wrapped in cotton wool and put away for a few months and don't do themselves any favours. But I think probably some of them are still too honest.
Yeah, we've had a few of those, haven't we, throughout the years? Daniel Sturridge comes to mind. But as growing up, I mean, did you want to be a footballer?
Well, I played for Kirby Town, Kirby Boys as a kid, and it was always an aspiration to play. And actually, when I got to university, I was we called them artisans in them days. You never signed, but I went to Nottingham University. I was playing for the uni there, and then I went for about 17 weeks with Notts County when they were in the second division, but nothing came of it. They signed some more Algerians to join Rennie Arcouk. I mean, a lad from Aston Villa were bombed off. And then I sort of drifted away from it a little bit then. I think I was just disillusioned very early because I was doing actually quite well in the reserve games. And then I just played amateur football all my life, played in Kirby right the way through till, even when I was living away down in London, I was coming back and playing at the weekends. So I played till my early 30s until injury stopped me. But I loved it. Truth be known, I was a better rugby player. But I wouldn't listen to anyone telling me I was a rugby player. But yeah, it would have, I think every kid's dream, isn't it? You know, if you're born in this city and you support Liverpool and you're watching the best team in the country, in Europe, win everything. You know, if you didn't want to aspire to be part of that, there'd be something wrong with you, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, you've coached before. And if people don't know already who Steve's son is, it's Conor Randall, who played for Liverpool, went through the academy and also debuted for Liverpool Football Club. He got to wear that famous red shirt, which must have made you the proudest dad ever.
It did. I mean, obviously, it was a bit of a surreal experience because it had been due to happen a few years before, and Conor's injuries were kicking in really, and every time something good was about to happen to him, something had changed the direction of it, just the way life is. So when we finally got to the point that he had his debut against Bournemouth in the cup, it was. It was surreal beyond belief, actually. But I found that it changed my relationship straight away with how I viewed the game, because it was just total nerves watching the lad out there. Massive pride, obviously, and something that no one can ever take away from him, which I know means the world to him too, to this day. So yeah, it was special for the family, and especially his granddad, who used to take him to all the training sessions at the academy when I was away working. I'd separated from Conor's mum. I'm going through a divorce and everything, so I was down in London working a lot. His granddad was up here getting into training sessions. I was back every weekend to look after the driving to the different academy, home and away with my dad and taking him everywhere to give him a bit of a break. But yeah, it was a surreal time, actually. Yeah, well, very exciting.
It's got to be taxing on another reason why I wanted you on the show as well, because I've never actually had somebody who has a son that's played professional football, and it's got to be taxing on the parents as well. You've got to put in 110%, just like Conor has to as well. You've got to take him all these places.
Yeah, I mean, God, we drove thousands of miles, home, away, and then obviously abroad as well. We followed every step of his career right the way through, and it is taxing, but it's so enjoyable when the kids, just watching them play at a good level. And I must admit, at first, it was old Hugh Macaulay came to see me. Just after the game, we were playing in the Kirby Summer League. So Conor was 6 years old. And he said, take him up to the academy. I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know what an academy was. And I was, coaching a side in Kirby, but I was living down south. And I didn't know they'd built an academy there. So he explained to me what it was. He said, you go up there and you just play. I said, well, how long does he go up there for? He said, until we tell you, you don't. And I went, oh, that doesn't sound very good. I don't think he'll be going. He'll stay playing football with me, you know. And then we got to the stage where after about probably 6 or 7 weeks of him playing summer football, 6 years old, because he was smashing the ball in from the halfway line and doing ridiculous things with the football, you know. We were getting Blackburn, Man City, Man United, Everton actually chasing us across the football pitch to speak to us. I thought, this is crazy. I had no concept, Stas, of what it was all about. But with me being away as well, it was a case of, do you just wait and have him playing with your mates, or does he play with me and he goes to get better coaching, professional coaching? And who am I if he goes there and enjoys it to tell him not to? Not actually realising what's involved. So it's a case of, do you want to go, son? My dad had just retired, so you know, he was able to take him everywhere he needed to go, and he went to Liverpool and Everton actually for the first 6 months. And then when it got to the stage where they were going to sign kids for under 9, so he was there for a year and a half nearly. But it got to under 9, he got the choice of where he wanted to go, and he went to Liverpool, obviously. Was
it tough to kind of let him go from your perspective? You're coaching him, you know, obviously you see something in Connor, and then to have somebody just kind of whisk in and say, you know, let us have him.
Well, it was, but I've got to say, with me being working away, and I was living down south by then and spending the weekends here with my parents, we had something like 1, 2, 3. There were 3 boys that were being courted by various academies from the team. So that team that I had from age 6 was going to break up because all the dads were going to take their kids to the academies. And I hate to say it, but people get drawn to that badge. And I'm not the biggest fan of academy football, by the way. Even though it's given Connor such great experiences and worldwide experiences, I'm not convinced it's the healthiest environment for kids to play football in. Because, you know, go back to coming from Kirby, all you've got to do is say, well, actually, 4 European Cup winners come from Kirby. Not one of them went to an academy. So you got Kenny Swain, Mortimer, Terry McDermott, one of the greatest players, one of the greatest scorers of great goals I've ever seen. And then Phil Thompson, you know, and they didn't come from that environment. So I'm firmly, if you understand, well, the belief that great footballers are born. You can make good footballers, you can make efficient footballers, but the greats are born. So I'm not sure if it's the right way to go or not, actually, even after going back through the system. I don't think we're producing any better players than we're naturally born, is my upshot.
Yeah, I think one of the issues also is, you know, because one of my mates, he coaches, you know, and he sees the families on the sidelines screaming and just, they take the fun out of the game because there's too much pressure. They want the kid to be the next Messi, the next Ronaldo. Yeah. And I mean, how do you deal with that? Because, you know, I've read even like, you know, Stevie G's book, you know, he came home like crying because he kind of lost that like love for the game. Like, you know, you see kids out on the street back home, you know, shirts and skins, having just a good time. But then when they're put in an environment where they're just kind of, you know, forced to do these drills, because I know as a kid, you just want to play for goals, don't you?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, one thing I always said to Connor was, if you tell me that you're not enjoying it, you don't go. It's as simple as that. You don't have to be here. The only reason you're here is you've told me you want to be here. And to be fair to the coaches at Liverpool at the time, funny enough, Steve Highway was the director when Connor first went. So I got to speak to Steve and I got to meet him. And when you're talking to people who you've supported from the sidelines from being a young kid, But to find out that he's actually a really down-to-earth fella who tells you as it is. You know, the first thing he said to all the kids was, at some stage, someone's going to leave this place, leave this club. And you're not part of the Liverpool Football Club, you're part of the academy. You know, so there was a grounded sense of realism with Steve, I thought. And I felt it was a very safe environment for Connor to be in. And most training sessions that I went to see were fun. There was a real good fun element in the early days. But you can't get away from the fact that as soon as a kid goes in there, he's assessed every session, formal assessments every 6 months. I think roughly there's about 2,000 kids went through Connor's age group for him getting through the academy, going to scholarship. And when you think of that as a numbers, and I think that's where it's become an industry, and that's where I think there's issues. But the academy itself, I don't think Connor has ever given up that experience because he loved it, and he was excelling in it. So I think as well, we talk about playing for fun's one thing, but if you're playing for fun, you're playing with your mates, there's no pressure, and you're doing really well, and people are telling you you're doing really well, you're going to enjoy it even more. So there was no pressure for Connor in the early days. He loved it. Obviously, that may change as you go through the process and injuries kick in and, you know, various things. But in the main, I think he had a really positive experience. Well, he wouldn't have been there for 17 years otherwise, you know.
I think that, you know, what was it, a few years ago, the Man City youngster committed suicide.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like mental health issues because with these kids, especially with their parents, you know, they want this kid to do well, whether it's, you know, for the kid or it's for themselves because they, you know, never made it as a footballer or they went, you know, money out of it. There just doesn't seem to be like a help network for these kids that do, you know, they'll let go.
I must admit, we didn't need that through the academy process. So I was going through it quite relaxed, really. But no, I completely get what you're saying in terms of that poor lad taking his life. And I think because of the sheer numbers that go through, unless you go in there with a sense of realism, that the odds are you're not going to make this program right the way through. You're not going to wear a shirt for the club. If you go in there with the expectation that you are going to be a professional footballer, in the majority of cases, people are going to get hurt. Now, you need that belief to get through. Don't get me wrong. You need that inner drive to go and be successful. You know, you look at the lads who excel when they go through, but the few and far between. And I think the pressure isn't so much put on by the academy system because they say, you know, you're here, you'll play. At one point, we may release you. It maybe is the parents or the media, social media, especially these days. And I think parents posting images, be it academy or even grassroots football, if their kids scoring the next wonder goal on Instagram and Facebook and everything else, puts too much pressure on the kids and probably sets unrealistic expectations. And that then creates a shed load of pressure. So I think there's many factors to why it's unhealthy in many respects, not just the academy, kids football in general. I think we've lost the plot. I used to ban parents. If a parent was getting out of order with me, or I thought he was overstepping the mark with his kid, when I ran the Dolphins, me and my mates, we'd tell the kid he wasn't welcome and we'd tell the parents not to turn up. I remember one time I was playing in the NAC in Netherton, and one parent was screaming at our goalkeeper. He wasn't happy with the way he was playing. So, and it was a game that would have taken us to top of the league, I think. And we won all kinds when we were playing footy, but it wasn't about winning, but we just naturally would win games. So I told my keeper to go up front, and this dad's screaming, and he's going, "Who's going in goal?" I said, "No one." He said, "What?" I said, "You don't like the keeper? Tough. Here we go, kids, go and play." Got battered, you know. And afterwards, he come run up to me. I said, "Never, ever speak to any of my players like that again because you're not welcome." And it's a shame parents lose the plot. before the kids, and then it transposes and the kids absorb it, if you like, through osmosis, and they believe they're going to be the next greatest thing. I just find it a real shame, because we didn't have those pressures as kids. We just went and played. But as I say, there was great players that came through without all of that pressure, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, I mean, you see on social media right now, it just seems like Harvey Elliott's getting battered, and I find that disgusting. That's the problem I have with Twitter. You hide behind a keyboard. It's not his fault. He's only 19. He's doing the best he can. He's playing out of position. But some Liverpool fans think Klopp's the problem one day, Pep Linders is the problem the next, and today's Harvey Elliott, and then tomorrow it might be Thiago or Henderson. It just goes in circles. But again, you're picking on a 19-year-old kid.
Oh yeah. Like, Conor got his fair share of that, and he's spoken about how difficult that was when he was getting released, if you like, from Liverpool. But the thing for me is when we were watching football as kids, if you were with your dad or your uncle, or in my case, my dad's mates, I'd be listening to everyone slaughtering the players in the pub. We all have opinion and are entitled to that opinion. But I didn't physically try and contact a player and say to him, "You didn't try today, you're loads of crap, you're not fit to wear the shirt, blah, blah, blah." All that nonsense from this entitled world that we live in sometimes is part of the problem. You're quite right. Social media, anti-social media is where we are with it. But yeah, I can remember sitting in the pub with my mates and with their dads and everyone else, killing players, absolutely slaughtering them. But it was all forgotten. And the next day, or the next week, when they put the shirt on again, you were right behind them. It was simpler times, I think.
Well, if that's the funny thing, I remember like a couple of my mates were all in the pub just having a go. I don't remember what player it was, just ripping him a new one. We walked out of the pub and he was right there, like seriously across the street walking. All my mates, hey, get an autograph.
Yeah.
Like, you two-faced bastards.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. But that's, it's the sad state of the world we live in, that you talk crap, behind the back, but if they're in front of you, you're like, "Oh man, pleased to meet you."
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And you're not going to change that now, because that's the way the world is. And all you can do is become immune to it and try and become mentally strong enough to cope with it. And I think from what I saw of the welfare system with the academies, they tried to help and they tried to support to a point. But then there's loads of stories of loads of lads who have been released at 15, 16, 17, and later who have found it really difficult, and it must be hard. If you've been at an academy since you were a little kid, being told you're going to be the next best thing, or you've begun to believe that, and the plan, then it's a lot for anyone to take on, I think. But overall, I found that experience for Con was positive, and I think he'd say the same. He certainly wouldn't have changed it for the world.
So when he did get released, how was it for him? Because again,
it was really, really tough. He'd had a couple of significant injuries leading up to it, and we haven't gone into it in any great deal, because I just naturally know how tough it would have been for him. And he's always spoke about anything he needs to speak to me about. He's one who comes to you. And he covered it in a previous podcast with some ex-pros who did a chat about it. And where I knew that he was okay was when the security guard said to me that he'd gone round every member of staff, thanked them for the time, said his goodbyes, and he told me how tough it was for him. So I knew it was difficult. And then, but in the lead up to it, in being released, it was also difficult because there was opportunities to go to various clubs. that wasn't happening because Liverpool wanted to retain him, all that kind of stuff. So for 2 years before Connor left Liverpool, he wasn't at the academy, he was at Melwood. And then it was the last 6 months after he came back from the injury that he sustained at Rochdale, which was a bad one, where he was just playing with the 23s and just seeing his time out. I think that was the most difficult time for him. And he said himself at the end of it all, he could have walked away and not kicked the ball again. But then we had the summer. We sat down and had a chance to go. We went over to see Terry McPhillips at Blackpool. And I could tell Conor really didn't want to go there. And Terry was actually sacked that night. It just didn't seem right when we walked in. And I was chatting to him afterwards and I said, look, I can see you're not really enamoured with this. And he said, Dad, I just need to take some time to think and decide what I want to do. And then we out of the blue, we got a chance to go to Bulgaria. And financially, it wasn't too bad. I think it gave him a chance just to get away and get his head together and a new life experience. And he decided to do that. So I don't even think his exit was a traditional exit. You know, it was quite prolonged because most of the lads who come through with Connor had gone on and got transfers elsewhere. Whereas season 2015-16, I think it was, Connor was on the bench nearly all the time, or 16-17. He was on the bench for the majority of games because we didn't have another right back. Obviously, waiting for Trent to come through. Klein was having his injury problems. Flano was in and out. He had difficulty as well. So, you know, we had to go a couple of moves for Connor, and they were close. But then at the 11th hour, Liverpool said no. So it was probably 18 months of it being difficult for Connor. He loved his time up at Hearts. That was a godsend. When he went up there, he really enjoyed that. So that was great. But then, you know, the physical leaving of your boyhood club when you've been there for 17 years, I defy anyone to say that wasn't difficult.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people don't understand like the injury issues as well.
Yeah.
Because you cannot kick a ball, you cannot run. I mean, no. That's your life, and it's gotta be tough on the player because, you know, he'll see his mates at the club going every day. He'll watch the telly, he'll watch the games. So that's another, you know, like issue they have to deal with. And
well, Conor had I think he was 13. Yeah, when he was 13, he played a couple of games for the under-15s. And we were away in Vorden. We'd gone to Holland for a tournament. And it was a crazy time. It was brilliant. We were told as parents we couldn't go. So in true I'll listen to Kirby Boy style, I arranged a trip for 12 of us to go out there. But with the director of Vorden Football Club, who was running it all, and made sure of Vitesse Arnhem. So we had an absolute ball. And we go to this tournament, and it was the first tournament a Liverpool side had won since the Dallas Cup years before. And in the semi-final, Conor went up for a header. He was playing centre-half at the time, headed the ball and collapsed, physically collapsed. So I've run out the stand, ran round to see what was going on. And to be told by the coach, he's all right, he'll get on, he'll carry on playing, we're going to win this. I was like, whoa. So straight away, I'm at loggerheads with this coach. But Conor did get up and did carry on playing. But then he didn't play for the next 2.5 months. And all we got told was it's just rest. There was no scan at the time. But we now know that was the first fracture that he's had in his life, if you like, through previous scans in later years on other injuries. They've gone, well, hang on, there's an old injury here it's healed, it's all right, but that was there. So that was an issue. And then he went off to England, actually, St. George's Park. I got a phone call to go and see Kenny Swain, because he was the manager, again, a Kirby lad. European Cup winner, and he was the manager of the under 15s. So it would have been the Victory Shield where all the kids start to play on that. Same squad where Jack Grealish would choose whether he'd be in that squad or go to play for Ireland. I think he went to play for Ireland. Those kind of players. Luke Shaw was in the squad as well, and Connor was due to be in the squad. And he just said to me, he said he can't run properly at the minute. He's really struggling. He said he is running and he won't take no for an answer, but get him on and tell Liverpool to have a look. And that's when they found an issue there. And again, to be fair to Liverpool at that time, they sent us straight to the Spire. We sat down and met the surgeon there, and he said, no, surgery won't be necessary. He'll be out for about 12 to 18 months and he'll be in a back brace. So, you've got a 14-and-a-half-year-old kid who all he's done since he was 6 years old is run, jump and kick a ball. Can't do it anymore. And he wasn't the only one. There was a number of players that it happened to. And researching afterwards, I've found out that it's primarily because they believed that lads were being overtrained during growth spurts. And nothing wrong against the system. It's just that the body wouldn't cope through the rigours of that at the time. So there was a number of players that had similar issues over the years. But I wasn't really concerned about that. It was my son. We were sitting in the Aspire at the south end of Liverpool. And I could see the fear on his face because he worried, is that it? Am I not going to be able to kick a ball anymore? So that was probably the most difficult time as a parent that I've had. And then subsequently, as his body started to acclimatise and change, he needed another surgery down. Well, he didn't have any surgery with his back, it just healed on its own. Then we had to go to London for another operation. Where the surgeon just said, I've done this for Mo Farah, he can still run, you'll be okay. And you sit there going, wow, you're in the best hands if you're going to get looked after, at least you're in the right place. And I do think that's where academy boys are lucky, because they get that level of support. I mean, if I look to Connor's injury that he had at Rochdale, it wasn't a tackle. It wasn't even, it was an assault. There's no way, other way of putting it. There's a lad playing for Berry, planted his feet, waited for Connor to head the ball, and as he came down, just took him out with a headbutt, shattered his cheek, his eye socket. Connor's unconscious. And I run down into the changing rooms because Connor gets wheeled in there, get given a postcode to where the local hospital is. There's no ambulance. I have to run and get my car from 5 streets away to come back. And that's League One. But they didn't need to have the ambulance because it was a cup game. And people don't see all that, and all the family were there for that game. You've got people generally fearful for his safety. And I'm running around in a car with a kid who's half unconscious, with paracetamol in my back pocket and a postcode. And it was even to the wrong hospital. So we then had to get to Manchester. They sorted everything out and then posted him straight off to Arrow Park, and Liverpool sorted it the next day. But at that time, he was still a Liverpool player on loan. And then you see the reality of football. And that's the side of the game where all these kids who go into these pristine academies have got no concept of what it can be like out there, So, yeah, the injuries are a massive thing, but, through anything like that, you always get stronger, don't you? So,
yeah, well, I think, throwing boys against men, we've seen it with Liverpool as well, a lot of especially because of the injury issues that Liverpool have had in the last couple of years. You look at the bench, they're all kids, and they come on and they're standing up against giants. Like when we played Burnley a couple of seasons ago, I was like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, these kids looking up at the 6'4", like built like bricks houses, like and you can see the fear because they get knocked off the ball quite easily. Them to us on the telly, we can't tell like how the contact is. But they'll come off all badly bruised and sore as hell. We as just supporters, we don't really see that. As opposed to like when you're down on the pitch and everything, or as a parent as well.
Yeah. I mean, the game's so quick and so physical, and I think. I remember there was a time we played Aston Villa at Liverpool's academy, and Connor was punched by the keeper. He was playing up front at that time, and he was punched that hard because he was a mid-air collision. His feet hit the crossbar as he landed. It was just awful. We were taken by ambulance to Ormskirk. They do all the scans and do everything else. And after about 20 minutes, I'm expecting the worst. And he came out with a broken thumb. That was it. And he went, I'll be playing on Monday. And it was, I always remember the day because it was the day that the director then, Frankie Mack, he says to me, I've got a good player to play with your Connor next season. We're just signing him from QPR. And it was Raheem Sterling. So it started then. And that marked like the start of beginning to bring in players at that age as well. So all of a sudden, you got the likes of Raheem, you saw Shea Ojo arrive from Milton Keynes Dons. Anyone who was doing well was getting pushed towards Liverpool. There was a chance that Jack Grealish was going to come over early doors. Another lad called Dan Cowley at Villa. And Villa were like quite rivals at the time. There were some great games against them. But yeah, you get those injuries, you get those knocks, but any kid who goes through a long-term injury, it's got to be difficult. There's another lad who was a really promising centre midfielder, and he broke his leg, and that did for him. He's still playing now, but he's never made it into professional ranks. And there's loads of stories of kids who get battered and bruised along the way, and I do think that's because of the competitiveness and the pressure of academy football, because kids in local footy, it didn't happen to you. Not to that extent anyway,
I remember just, Sunday League, 14 years old, playing against 18-year-olds, and I got freaking walloped. Like I was shit scared. This one defender, I was left midfield. And within the first 5 minutes of the game, he walloped me. And then from the rest of the game, I just stood off of him. I was like, I'm not having this.
Well, it's funny though, because I think maybe it's my fault. I might have instilled this in Connor. I played for my primary school from age 6. So I was playing against 11-year-olds when I was 6. So I was petrified. The shirt didn't fit me. It was down to my knees, and even if I rolled the sleeves up, it was still too heavy. And it was a kit from the 1950s. We had a really itchy Wolves kit. But I still remember it to this day. And I was playing against this lad from, I think it was Overdale, and he had a beard. And I was absolutely petrified. There was giants from all over Kirby who used to play. But we were a very small school, so if you were half decent from the age 6, 7, you were in. And there was a few of us who played, but God, we got absolutely mullered. But it was, but that was my upbringing, and I just always say to Con, you just work hard, be honest, do what you can do. But it's interesting. Before you asked about, the expectation of academy football and how you cope with it. From day one, I always said to Connor, I was being really crude. I said, there's 92 jobs at the end of this. For one position, 92 clubs, not thinking abroad or not thinking anything like that. And if you're lucky, there's 184 jobs in the world. I said, it's tough. And every year we're churning out 400, 500, 600 academy players are being released from contracts. I said, so it's competitive as well. So if you want it, I'll back you, but it's going to be tough. So we always had that understanding of just how difficult it was in the family. And Connor was never under any illusions how difficult it would have been.
Well, how's he enjoying life in the Scottish Premier?
I think it suits him. He was really enjoying it until he broke his leg against Celtic in August. That came at a really bad time because, funny enough, the season before that, 2 seasons ago, his back flared up again. But it was the old injury, not a new one. So they managed to get a training regime and a bit of rest in that meant that he missed half the season, but the back problem won't come back again. And then he started playing really well. The fans talk to him. He's suited to Scottish footy. He's honest and he's hardworking. So 2 requisites. If you haven't got that, you ain't going to be able to succeed in Scotland. And he finished last year in the top 6 for the 3rd time in their history, Ross County. So, and funny enough, it was my first away game. My first away game was Bruges at Wembley with my dad's mates. So I've gone from Saint Etienne to Bruges. And then my first European away was Pittodrie with another one of my dad's mates. So, and where Terry McDermott scores another fantastic goal. So there I am at Pittodrie, and my mind's gone straight back to being a 10-year-old kid watching Terry Mack and the boys in that white kit. And we needed all the results to go the right way. Ross County were in the top 6, which meant potentially Europe. And they were only 2 points off. In the end, I think we were 2 points or 1 point from qualifying for Europe, which would have been the first time in their history. And it was a cold day. It was spring, but it was freezing. And they won 1-0. All the rest of the results went the right way. And instinctively, the players went mad. So Connor's come run towards me. There's probably only, I don't know, maybe 800 away fans, which is a big following for County away because they've got a hell of a long way to travel. It's right up there. So he finds me out in the crowd. I run down. You would have thought it was Hendo and his dad at Madrid, hugging each other and everything else. But that moment was probably the most excited I've been watching a football match for a long, long time. And it wasn't just about, great, getting in the top 6. It was everything you've been through. You're back on the pitch. You've had a good half season, a solid football, 29 games, never less than a 7 out of 10, with a bunch of lads who were working hard and are really appreciated by these fans. And it was absolutely amazing. And my second wife, Jana, who's originally from Istanbul, she was with me. So to share that moment, and she's been with Connor since she was a baby, if you like. So we came back to Liverpool in 2004. So she's been in his life since then. And it was a really emotional day for us, And that was the greatest feeling I've had watching him play football. And bizarrely, that was more important to me than his debut for Liverpool. Even when, I think his Premier League debut, he got in Team of the Week and got slaughtered by the fans on Twitter. And yet he was in Team of the Week. And I think Aguero was up front. No mean feat for a lad who's just played crap. And I was like, wow, that meant the world to me, because it was all of his battles, his personal battles, put to bed. And then he was just growing from there. We went up in the summer for the cup games, and we travelled. I took his granddad's 81, so I took his granddad to all the games. We went on it. There's 2 men and a dog at one of the grounds for the cup game. So we did that, and then he played Dunfermline at home, and you could see the team are like Dunfermline, I think, in League 2. And Ross County were great that day, and Connor was having a ball. Started well against Hearts. We always like going to Hearts, and he really enjoys going back there because he did really love playing for that club. And he started the season brightly, did well in the Celtic game. He always seems to do well against Celtic and Aberdeen, are the teams that he seems to excel against. And and then he just went in for the innocuous challenge with Jota on his leg mat. So until that point, he was beginning to really enjoy it. He's settled up there. Obviously, he's got his own place where he's living up there now. He lives in Inverness, and he really, really enjoys the club. They're a fantastic little club, although they don't run themselves like a little club, if that makes sense. So capacity-wise, whatever they've got, 4,000 or 5,000. It's a small stadium, but it's highly professional, and he's really, really enjoying it. So hopefully they'll have a strong second half to the season, because at the minute they're rock bottom. So they need to bounce back.
Is he still injured?
No. He came back against Rangers. Funny enough, he was directly up against Ryan Kent, another ex-Liverpool player, who was at the academy with. Ryan's only a year younger than Con. So he managed to kick him a few times and vice versa. And then they walked off the pitch arm in arm and having a natter, you know. So, and with Mick Beale being the manager of Rangers now, you know, so yeah, it was, he came back there, so he's in his third game back, and tomorrow it's Livingston at home, so hopefully they'll do okay.
Yeah, best of luck to Connor. Now,
thank you.
Let's get on to you, Mr. Artist.
Oh yeah,
where did all this come from? I mean, were you you know, like we say with footballers, were you born with the talent? Did it take time for you to kind of figure stuff out?
It is another mad story. I've actually wrote a book about it all, because it doesn't make any sense. So I wrote a book called Kirby Chronicles, which is 33 paintings and basically the life stories behind all those paintings and how I got into art in the first place. And basically what happened in 2014, I mean, by trade, I'm a risk director for a financial services company. I was on the board of a significant company down south. And in 2014, my wife, Janet, was diagnosed with an incurable brain tumour. So she had a couple of surgeries, and during all that rehabilitation, I mean, she's still got the condition. It can't be treated, can't be operated anymore, but she's doing really, really well. So 2014, I think the prognosis was roughly 5 years, and she's still here and she's fighting fit. So we're dead lucky. That's right up front. We're dead lucky. And when she came through her rehabilitation, it was a case of, well, what am I going to do? You know, I clearly can't do the job I was doing at the time. Too stressful. It was too time consuming, and it wasn't here. It was down south. So she said, I've always wanted to be married to an artist. So I went, oh, right, okay, I best go and Google it then. So, and that was it. That was literally the start of it. We went over to Spain for about 12 weeks just to get our heads together once she'd had the second surgery, and just to compress everything and come up with a plan. And through touring around Spain, doodling and making silhouettes of her and I, exploring Spain together, I said, you know what, I'll give it a go. We were fortunate enough, we had a place out in Turkey that we were able to get rid of to bankroll this, if you like. So I just came back, got myself studio space in Liverpool, started to paint, and hopefully since 2016 to now I've got a bit better. So yeah, so it's worked out quite well. Bizarre, but worked out well.
Well,
it's funny. I'll just tell you this as well very quickly. When we did the book, I was going to the away games with going to the European away games with the group of regulars, all those lads, and one of them was Jamie Carragher's then ambassador, Les Wright, and Jamie's a great supporter of local causes, and he'll back anyone if they're going to do something within the community. So I'd set up in my head, I had this idea that I was going to put 20,000 to charity from the artwork to build a legacy for my wife, and it gives us both something to concentrate on. So Les had heard about this when we'd been out, put me in touch with Jamie, and those guys give me £1,000 that I then turned into 3,000 for charity through creating a book and doing some artwork. So, you know, I've had nice support along the way too. But there's a hell of a lot of football connections in this little village called Liverpool. And people will continue to help you if you're brave enough to tell your story. And it's interesting when you were saying, you know, you like doing a podcast about, because it's story based and it's about you, and it doesn't matter how random your story is, it's a story. And now we're up to about 37,000 for charity, I think we've done so far. And just on, I've just done another painting this week, which is a commission, and I'll get another 400, 500 the charity base for that, which will go to the Walton Centre. So I think we'll just tip over 20,000 for them. And again, with the Walton Centre, we do a lot where every year there's a Jan Fairclough ball, which is David Fairclough's wife's ball, because unfortunately she passed away. So every year I donate artwork that gets auctioned for them too. But we're just up to about 20 grand for them and 37 overall since we started. So yeah, we feel blessed. It's going well.
Well, that's the thing, I think, with Scousers, you know, they'll give you the clothes on their back. You know, if we can help someone, we will. Yeah. And it just amazes me that you know, you have a wife that's terminally ill, and you're doing so much for charities as well. That's just my hat's off to you. You know.
No, but the thing there, Daz, that's not selfless. It's because it gave us a focus, and it gave order to utter chaos. Because I mean, that week, I wrote in the book, all the gods must have been angry with me that week. They must have. We buried my mum on a Wednesday. My wife's diagnosed on the Thursday. And it must have took me about 2, 3, 4 weeks to even start to process it all. And to be fair, my wife's a really logical lady, but not through this. It just turned the whole thing upside down. And because I suppose in my corporate world, we'd always done quite a bit for different foundations and different charities and things. And I always remember how rewarding that was. But I must admit, I've done more personally since I've left that corporate world through the art. And it's led to other connections. We've got commissions from it. We're still running a non-profit. But you know, maybe this year that'll change. And especially with the Walker stuff, I've already managed to get a couple of commissions off the Walker. In terms, not off the Walker, but on the back of the Walker Gallery exhibition. I've had people approach me to do some work. I managed to get a couple of commissions for Knowsley Council recently, and then we've got a couple of my original Kirby ones, all based around what life was like in the 80s. They've been picked up on the back of people seeing the paintings. So yeah, it's remarkable, really. But it's not selfless, and I always say to people, I'm really fortunate. We feel really fortunate. And we're not doing it for praise or for glory or anything like that. We're doing it for ourselves. And long may that continue.
Man, I don't cry too often. I have a little tear.
I can't see that. I can't see that on there, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I can just edit it out anyway.
All right, you do that, mate.
I'll edit the tears out.
Well, while you're doing your editing, Daz, try and get me going straight, because this Zoom thing is through my edit.
Oh, you're actually straight on here.
Oh, that's all right then. It's only on mine then.
Yeah, it must be on your end, because you're pretty level here. But I appreciate you coming on and telling your story again. Like I've always said, you know, everyone's stories matter. They're all different. They're all connected to, you know, us supporting the greatest team ever, Liverpool Football Club. But you know what you do for the community, what you and your wife do, again, just it fills my heart that there are people like yourself out there that like to help people.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, Daz. You meet you meet more good people than you'll ever know doing things like this. I mean, I'm quite close now with Ted the Red from the Liverpool Disabled Supporters Association, and the work that those guys do, unbelievable. And what stories that man's got to tell. He's such an interesting guy, him and his wife are amazing. You know, so I've managed to do a bit of work with those guys as well. So it's those connections, as I say, they always open up. And, you know, for a little lad from Kirby, I came from quite a middle-class family, I must admit. My dad's a prison officer, like I said. My mum was working for the bank. You know, but anyone who's read my book will know that didn't come without some challenges too. You know, we lost my brother when he was really young. He was only 19. But this idea of you help yourself comes from my granddad. I know we were speaking earlier about what effect these people can have in your life. My granddad designed me. There was no way I was going to be anything different. I was independent. I've never looked at anyone else to sort out my troubles. I'll do it myself. And very quickly, one last footy story. I was wrecking my brain going through my first games. Where was it? Went to Wembley, went to Bruges, watched Bruges, went to Pittodrie. And then my first away game on my own, without any adults, I was only 13, and it was 1981. And it was the Spurs Cup final, the League Cup final. We all went to London, age 13. You go, very different times. You know, 13 years old, I think I was still holding Connor's hand taken to the match. Madness.
That was a good match too.
It was very good. I've got to remember. It was better than 83. We all went, the same group of lads went to Wembley, and it was Man United. But that was scary. All the way down, there was mayhem. Absolute nonsense. Watford Gap was horrific. But then, you know, people our age, I always say my away career, if like as a fan, was 81 to primarily 89, and the dynamic changed after 89 for obvious reasons. Yeah. But 81 to 89, 83, 81 to 89 was primarily me going away with lads when I wasn't playing football myself, and all these home games. And it was a different time. But all I remember is turning up at places, being fearful of how we got there in one piece, not seeing much of the football because it was too small to even see anything. And then run the gauntlet before you got home. Very, very different times.
Yeah, legging it to the train station as fast as you can.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm ducking sharply, especially if you're in Victoria and you've just been on the Kippax. And that was lunacy, that was. But interesting enough, with the artwork, that's why I was really lucky to get into the Walker, was when Dave Hewitson was talking to me about all the casual stuff, because all I was doing was painting us as kids. So I was painting us all going to a match, or I was painting us all waiting for the bus, or having a ciggy on the market, whatever it was. But we were wearing the gear, because if you didn't wear the gear, you stood out like a sore thumb, and we all had enough to cope with. So you got your hands on the clobber, didn't you? And I was very fortunate, again, complete luck. If I hadn't painted those paintings, I wouldn't have got into the Walker, and then the commissions wouldn't have kicked off and we wouldn't have done so well. So it's all makes sense in the end, mate.
Yeah, all intertwined. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and telling your story.
Oh, you're welcome.
And if you're interested in Steve's art, he has a website called steverandallart.com. Is it .com or .co.uk?
.com, that's it.
.com. So steverandallart.com. Check out his artwork. I already have, and it is amazing. And I do love the 80s, you know, because obviously you can tell I'm a massive trainer.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, just one or two. That's just a tiny bit. The missus is like, come on, no more. And I'm like, look, it's not hurting anyone. Well, me wallet, but you know, it keeps me in trouble still. So
being at 80s, like going to football, and obviously in love with Adidas, I'll just there's a title of a painting that I'm working on at the moment. It won't be ready for about 12 months, but it's part of the second book I'm doing, and it's called Muhammad Ali Met the Warriors, and it was St Andrews, 1984, coming out of the back of there, and there was a group wearing white chichinis, and then there was us Scousers wearing Adidas, and that was it. And then it was, how the hell do I jump over that wall and get the train home and avoid all this nonsense? So I'm yet to work out. I've started to play around with it with a few sketches, but it's going to be St Andrews 84 and Muhammad Ali meets the Warriors. So we'll see how that goes.
I'll tell you what, I definitely want a print of that.
Yeah, we'll get that sorted. I need to do a few more Liverpool ones. We've done quite well with a couple. We did one for old Mac Vay's foundation, raised a few bob for them. But weirdly, I've had more commissions from Evertonians than Liverpoolians. Very odd.
Yeah.
But I don't knock any work back, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's work, right?
That's it, mate.
Well, Steve, again, I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully everyone enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers, Dad.